The spaceport was full of noise, people from many worlds walking fast, machines humming, voices calling. Traders shouted about their goods, children ran between the lines, and security drones floated above. It looked normal, just another busy day in the galaxy. But the human noticed something. His name was Daniel, a traveler who came here only to catch his next ship. He liked watching crowds. He liked to see aliens of different shapes and colors, all moving with purpose. But this time his eyes stopped on one strange scene. In the middle of the moving crowd, two tall alien men walked quickly. Their bodies were covered in rough gray skin, and their arms were long and heavy. Between them was a small figure. At first Daniel thought it was their child, but then he looked again. It was a little alien girl. Her skin was pale blue, her hair silver like threads of light. She was small, weak, maybe 8 or 9 years old in human terms. She tried to walk, but her steps were short and stumbling. The two men pulled her forward by her arms, not gently but roughly. Daniel frowned. He looked around. Hundreds of people were here, yet nobody cared. Everyone's eyes slid away as if nothing was wrong. Then Daniel saw her eyes. The girl lifted, her head for only 1 second. Their eyes met. In that second, Daniel saw fear. Not the fear of a child throwing a tantrum. Not the fear of being scolded by parents. No, it was the kind of fear that spoke without words. Help me. Please. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. One of the men's hands pressed tightly against her back, pushing her forward, almost hiding her from view. Daniel's heart beat faster. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Did anyone see that? Daniel whispered, turning his head. But the crowd moved like a river. Aliens passed by without stopping. A trader was laughing loudly. A guard drone buzzed overhead but did not pause. People looked everywhere except at the girl. Daniel moved to the side, pretending to adjust his travel bag. His eyes never left the three figures. He watched them cross through the crowd, heading toward a darker corner of the port. They moved too quickly, too secretive. He thought maybe he was wrong. Maybe she was their daughter. Maybe she was just tired. But the image of her eyes burned in his mind. That silent scream, that desperate look. Daniel followed. He walked carefully, not too close, keeping his head down. His boots tapped on the metal floor, lost in the noise of hundreds of others. The air smelled of oil, spices, and the sharp sting of ozone from ship engines. The two aliens dragged the girl toward the maintenance gates. Daniel knew those gates well. They led to service tunnels, not for travelers, only for workers. Why would they take a child there? The girl stumbled. She fell to her knees. One of the men yanked her up harshly. Daniel heard a soft cry, quickly, silenced by the man's grip. Daniel's hands curled into fists. He could not look away. His brain shouted warnings. This is not your problem. Stay out of it, walk away. But his heart shouted louder. No one else will help her. Only you saw, only you care. The crowd behind him was fading. The open space with bright lights was now far. Ahead of him stretched the shadow of the tunnels. The men disappeared inside, pulling the girl with them. The noise of the port softened until all Daniel could hear was the echo of his own steps. He stopped. His mouth felt dry. He had a choice. If he followed them, he could be in danger. Maybe they were armed. Maybe it was some kind of trap. He was just one man. But then he remembered that 1 second. Her eyes meeting his, a plea too strong to ignore. Daniel stepped into the shadow. The air grew colder. The lights here were dim, flickering. Pipes lined the walls, dripping water. The sound of the busy port was gone. Now only silence. Silence, and faint footsteps ahead. He followed carefully, keeping his distance. The girl struggled again. Daniel could hear her small shoes scraping the floor, the sound of her breath short and frightened. One of the men hissed in anger and pulled her harder. Daniel's heart pounded. He wanted to shout, to run forward, but he stayed back. He needed to know where they were taking her. He needed to be smart. The tunnel curved, leading deeper into the dark. The girl looked back once more. Her eyes, shining even in the dim light, met his again. She did not speak. She did not need to. Daniel knew. She was being kidnapped, and only he had seen it. Daniel moved deeper into the tunnel, his breath slow, his footsteps careful. The noise of the spaceport was gone now. The only sounds were the drip of leaking pipes and the echo of boots against metal. The kidnappers did not notice him yet. They were too busy forcing the girl forward. The little alien girl tried to resist. Her small hands pressed against the wall, but the gray-skinned men pulled her away. She turned her face once again. Her silver hair stuck to her wet cheeks and her lips trembled. She wanted to cry out, but she didn't. Daniel realized why. A thin strip of metal wrapped around her throat, glowing faintly red. It was a control collar. Illegal. Banned in most systems. The collar could shock her if she shouted or tried to escape. Daniel had heard of these devices. They were used to silent slaves. The girl opened her mouth and nothing came out. Not even a scream. But her eyes begged louder than any sound. It was a plea. A cry for help without words. Daniel's chest tightened. He had seen pain before. He had been a soldier once, long ago. He had seen prisoners, victims, and orphans. But something about this small alien child struck deeper. Maybe it was because she was alone. Maybe because no one else cared. The two men dragged her further down until they reached a locked service door. One of them tapped a code into the panel. The door opened with a hiss. They shoved the girl inside. Daniel reached the door before it. Closed. He pressed his hand flat, stopping it. The heavy metal vibrated against his palm. He pushed quietly and slipped inside. The room beyond was dim, lit only by a single overhead lamp. Crates were stacked against the walls, marked with alien symbols. It smelled of rust and chemicals. The men spoke in low voices, their words rough and sharp. Daniel stayed hidden in the shadows, watching. One of the men pulled a small device from his pocket. He scanned the girl with it. Numbers and lights flashed across the screen. The man grinned, showing crooked teeth. Perfect, he muttered in his tongue, though Daniel could understand enough. She will fetch a fortune. The other laughed. Rare blood, rare genes. The market will pay double. The girl's eyes widened. She shook her head violently, tears running down her face. She pressed her hands together, a gesture of begging. She was pleading not to be sold, not to be taken away. Daniel felt anger burn inside him. His fists clenched. He wanted to charge at them, to break their bones. But he forced himself to stay still. He needed to think. 2 against 1, and he had no weapon. He couldn't win in a straight fight. Not yet. The girl's silent plea grew stronger. Her gaze swept the room and landed on him. She had noticed him in the shadows. For a second, hope flickered in her eyes, but Daniel quickly raised a finger to his lips, telling her to stay quiet. She froze, but her tears kept falling. She nodded, very slowly. She trusted him now. The men tied her hands with a cord. The glow of the collar flared again, keeping her silent. Then they began talking about ships, routes, and meeting a buyer in a far-off system. Daniel listened, memorizing every detail. These weren't random thugs. They were part of a network. Kidnappers who sold rare children into slavery. The girl was not the first, and she would not be the last. He couldn't let that happen. The men pushed her toward another door leading to the loading docks. Outside, Daniel could hear the low hum of engines. They had a small transport waiting. They were going to smuggle her off this world before anyone even noticed. Daniel's mind raced. He could not wait for security. By the time the authorities came, the girl would be gone. He had only minutes to act. The girl stumbled again, almost falling to her knees. One of the men cursed and kicked her lightly to force her forward. Daniel's jaw tightened. He could not watch anymore. But then something unexpected happened. The girl dropped a small object. It rolled across the floor, stopping near Daniel's boots. He bent down and picked it up. It was a carved stone, tiny and worn. Maybe a toy, maybe a charm. She must have carried it for comfort. She had dropped it on purpose, as if saying, "Don't forget me, follow me." Daniel held the stone tight. He looked up, her eyes locked with his one more time. A silent plea, stronger than before. "Please, save me." The men shoved her into the transport bay. The door slammed shut behind them. Daniel was left in the shadows, clutching the little stone. His heart pounded. He had no plan, no weapon, and no backup. But he had a decision. He could walk away. He could pretend he saw nothing. Like everyone else in the spaceport, he could ignore her. Or he could follow. Daniel slipped the stone into his pocket. His jaw set hard. He would not abandon her. Because sometimes, even in a galaxy full of cold hearts, one human could still listen to a silent plea. The transport bay was noisy and full of shadows. Ships rested on their landing pads, engines cooling down with a low hum. Steam hissed from pipes, filling the air with mist. The kidnappers walked quickly, dragging the little alien girl between them. She looked smaller than ever, her silver hair damp with tears, her tiny steps barely keeping up. Daniel followed from a distance. He moved between containers and piles of cargo, keeping his body low, his eyes fixed on the men. He had no weapon, no armor, only courage and his mind, yet something inside him refused to let her vanish into the dark. The men stopped near a side gate. Their ship was waiting outside, hidden in the service alleys of the port. Daniel realized where they were going. That alley was narrow, dangerous, and quiet. Nobody would pass through there. It was the perfect place for criminals. The kidnappers shoved the girl forward. She stumbled again, her knees scraping against the rough metal floor. One of the men growled and jerked her arm so hard she cried out, though no sound escaped because of the collar. Her face twisted in pain, but her eyes kept searching for him. Daniel pressed his back against a wall, his heart racing. He thought about rushing them, but reason stopped him. If he failed, they would kill him, or worse, kill her. He needed a chance. The chance came when one of the men paused to check his wrist device. A signal flickered and he spoke. "Buyer is waiting. Cargo secured. Cargo." They called her Cargo. Daniel's fists clenched. The men turned toward the alley. The path ahead was narrow, the walls high, and the lights weak. It was the kind of place where people disappeared forever. Daniel slipped after them, moving silently. The air grew colder as he entered the alley. Shadows stretched long, broken only by the flicker of old lamps. A foul smell rose from drains at the edges. Rats scurried across the floor. The kidnappers did not look back. They thought nobody cared. They thought nobody dared to follow. But Daniel was there. The girl's foot dragged across the floor. She looked over her shoulder one last time. Her glowing eyes locked with Daniel's in the shadows. For just a heartbeat, hope lit her face. Then she was yanked forward again. Daniel took a slow breath. His body felt tense, every muscle ready. He had followed them this far. Now the alley was his chance. There would be no crowd to hide behind. No witnesses. Just him, the girl, and her captors. He looked around. Broken pipes hung from the wall. A loose piece of metal lay on the ground, sharp at the edge. He crouched and picked it up quietly. It wasn't much, but in his hands it could become a weapon. The men reached the end of the alley where their small ship waited. Its ramp was lowered, steam rising from its engines. They pushed the girl forward. Daniel's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He knew he had only seconds. If they got her aboard, she was gone. Now, he whispered to himself. He stepped from the shadows. His boots struck the ground louder than he expected, echoing across the walls. The kidnappers turned sharply, their eyes narrowing. "What are you doing here, human?" one of them growled. His voice was deep, rough like grinding stones. Daniel lifted the sharp metal piece, holding it like a blade. "Let her go." The men laughed. a cruel, ugly laugh that echoed in the alley. She's ours. Bought and paid for. Walk away before we break you. Daniel's grip tightened. His heart pounded, but he didn't move back. He took one step closer. His eyes never left the girl. She stared at him wide-eyed, frozen between fear and hope. For the first time, she wasn't alone. I said. Daniel repeated, his voice steady. Let her go. The kidnappers stopped laughing. Their smiles faded. One of them shoved the girl aside and stepped forward, pulling out a stun baton. Sparks danced across its tip, bright and dangerous. Daniel's stomach tightened. He had fought before, but never against aliens this strong. Still, he stood tall. The girl pressed her back to the wall, her small hands trembling. She couldn't scream, but her eyes screamed for him. Daniel raised the piece of metal higher. His mind sharpened. He was ready. The alley became silent. Only the hum of the waiting ship and the drip of water filled the air. The kidnappers circled him slowly, their eyes glowing in the dim light. Daniel's breath came steady. This was no longer just about saving her. It was about standing against cruelty. In the shadows of the dark alley, the battle was about to begin, and Daniel knew one thing: he could not lose. The alley was silent except for the hiss of steam from the kidnapper's ship. Daniel stood firm, the sharp piece of metal gripped in his hand, his eyes locked on the two towering figures in front of him. The little alien girl pressed herself against the wall, her collar glowing faintly red, keeping her silent even though terror shone in her eyes. One of the gray-skinned men stepped closer, swinging his stun baton lazily. Sparks snapped at the air sharp and bright. Human, he said with a cruel grin. You don't know what you are doing. Walk away. Forget this child. Daniel didn't move. His voice was low but steady. She's not your cargo. She's not for sale. Let her go. The second man let out a harsh laugh, his teeth jagged. Do you even understand what she is? She's rare blood. She's worth more than your life. You're standing in the wrong alley, human. Daniel shifted his stance. His soldier instincts, long buried, began to wake. He measured the space, the distance, the weight of his makeshift blade. His heart raced, but his mind was calm. He had been in worse places before. What made this moment different was not the danger, but the girl. Watching him, waiting, believing in him, the first kidnapper lunged. The baton crackled as it sliced through the air toward Daniel's chest. Daniel dodged to the side fast, the metal edge in his hand scraping against the wall with a screech. The spark lit the alley for a moment. He countered quickly, slashing at the attacker's arm. The sharp metal cut shallow but enough to draw a growl of pain. The second man roared and charged. Daniel ducked, rolling across the damp ground just in time to avoid being crushed by the alien's massive fist. His shoulder scraped against the floor, pain shooting up his arm, but he forced himself to rise again. The girl's eyes widened, following every move. She wanted to cry out, to warn him, but the collar held her voice prisoner. Her silent plea filled the air stronger than any scream. Daniel swung his makeshift blade again, this time aiming for the legs. The first man stumbled, nearly falling. Daniel pressed forward, adrenaline pushing him. He struck again, aiming higher, forcing the kidnappers to back away from the girl, but they were strong. Too strong. One grabbed Daniel by the shoulder and shoved him hard against the wall. The impact rattled his bones. The baton came down, crackling with electricity. Daniel raised his arm in defense. The shock burned through his muscles, searing pain shooting through him. He bit down on the scream, refusing to fall. He twisted, using all his strength, and rammed the sharp metal into the alien's side. The man roared, staggering back, blood seeping from the wound. Daniel gasped for breath, sweat dripping down his face. He was hurt, but he was still standing. The second man snarled, "You'll die for this, human." Daniel's eyes flicked to the girl. She was on her knees now, trembling, her tiny hands pressed together as if in prayer. She wasn't giving up. She was waiting for him. And Daniel knew he couldn't fail her. The second man rushed again. This time, Daniel didn't back away. He sidestepped, slamming his shoulder into the alien's chest. then struck upward with the blade. The edge scraped across the alien's jaw, leaving a bloody line. The kidnapper howled in rage, but Daniel pressed the attack, striking again and again, forcing the two men to retreat step by step. Sparks from the baton lit the alley like lightning, shadows dancing across the walls. The fight was brutal, each moment heavier than the last. Daniel's arms ached, his lungs burned, but his will was iron. He thought of the girl, of her silent plea, of how everyone else in the port had looked away. He would not be like them. The first man stumbled, clutching his bleeding side. The second growled, trying to shield him. Their confidence was cracking. Daniel pointed the blade at them. His voice was hoarse but firm. "This ends here. She goes free." The girl's glowing eyes shone with tears, but this time there was hope inside them. The kidnappers exchanged a glance. Their arrogance had faded. They had expected an easy job, a silent child, and no witnesses. But now they faced a human who refused to back down. The first man hissed, spitting blood. "You don't know what you've started, human. This is bigger than you, bigger than her. You've made enemies tonight." Daniel didn't lower his weapon. His stance said everything. "I don't care." The kidnappers stepped back toward their ship, dragging themselves slowly. They weren't finished, not yet. The fight might pause here, but Daniel knew they would come again, stronger, with more men. The ship's ramp hissed shut. The engines roared. The vessel lifted into the dark sky, leaving behind smoke, silence, and one trembling child. Daniel dropped the bloody piece of metal, his chest heaving. He walked toward her carefully, slowly, not to scare her. She looked up at him, her lips trembling, her collar still glowing faintly. For the first time, she wasn't looking with fear. She was looking with gratitude. Daniel knelt beside her. "You're safe now," he whispered. Her hands reached out, tiny and shaking, and gripped his sleeve, and, though her collar kept her voice locked, her eyes spoke again, clearer than ever. "Thank you." Smoke from the kidnapper's ship drifted through the alley, stinging Daniel's eyes. He coughed and steadied himself, his body aching from the fight. The sharp piece of metal was gone, dropped during the struggle. His hands were raw, his arms heavy, but his spirit was burning strong. The little alien girl still clutched his sleeve. Her fingers were so small, trembling, yet holding on with all the strength she had left. Daniel looked at her collar, its faint red glow reminding him she could not speak, could not scream, but her eyes told him everything. She trusted him now. "We need to move," Daniel whispered. "They'll be back." He glanced around the alley. The kidnapper's ship was gone, but that didn't mean safety. If they were part of a larger network, reinforcements would come. Daniel had to get the girl out of this place before more danger arrived. He helped her stand. She leaned against him, weak from fear and exhaustion. Together they stepped back toward the main port, their footsteps echoing in the empty alley. But halfway through, Daniel's instincts screamed. He pulled the girl behind a crate just as the shadows ahead shifted. 3 more figures stepped into view. More kidnappers. These ones were different. Leaner, faster looking, their eyes sharp. One carried a plasma knife, its blade glowing blue. Another held a net launcher designed for capturing live prey. The third scanned the alley with a visor that gleamed red in the dim light. Daniel's stomach tightened. He was unarmed, the girl, too weak to run fast, and the alley too narrow to slip away unnoticed. They had walked into a trap. The girl gripped his hand tighter, her glowing eyes wide with fear. She shook her head, silently pleading with him not to give up. Daniel looked at her, then back at the men. His mind worked quickly. He had no weapon, but he had the alley, pipes, crates, shadows. He could use them. He had to. The men spread out, blocking the way. One sneered. "Human, hand over the cargo. You're interfering with business you don't understand." Daniel rose slowly from behind the crate, keeping the girl hidden behind him. His voice was calm, but inside his heart pounded like a drum. "She's not cargo, she's a child, and you're not taking her anywhere." The man with the plasma knife smirked. Brave words for someone about to die. They moved closer. Daniel scanned the ground. A broken pipe lay near his foot, metal loose and heavy. He bent quickly and grabbed it, holding it like a club. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The first attacker lunged with the knife. Daniel sidestepped, swinging the pipe hard. It clanged against the attacker's wrist, sending sparks as the knife fell to the ground. The alien hissed in pain, clutching his arm. The second fired the net launcher. A glowing mesh shot through the air. Daniel grabbed the girl and rolled aside, the net slamming into the wall behind them. Sparks fizzed as the mesh tightened and locked. The third man, the one with the visor, barked into a comm. "We've got resistance, send backup." Daniel's blood ran cold. More were coming. He couldn't win a long fight. He had to escape now. "Run," he whispered to the girl, pulling her with him. They sprinted down the alley, Daniel swinging, the pipe wildly to keep the attackers back. The girl stumbled but kept moving, her grip tight on his hand. Behind them, angry voices shouted. Footsteps pounded the ground. They burst out of the alley and back into the crowded port. The noise hit them like a wave, traders shouting, machines buzzing, people rushing everywhere. For a moment, the kidnappers hesitated. They couldn't strike openly here, not with so many eyes watching. Daniel used the chaos to his advantage. He pushed through the crowd, weaving between aliens and machines, pulling the girl close. He didn't know where to go, only that they had to keep moving. The girl looked up at him, her silver hair falling across her face. Her eyes were full of fear, but also determination. She wasn't giving up. Daniel led her through the market stalls, past traders selling glowing fruit and cages of strange animals. He ducked behind a tent, catching his breath. But the kidnappers weren't far. He could see them pushing through the crowd, scanning every corner. Their visor glowed red as it searched for signs of heat. Daniel's heart raced. He needed a plan. Then, he spotted it, a maintenance shaft near the edge of the market, half hidden by a pile of crates. It led to the service tunnels, dangerous but less crowded. Maybe he could lose them in there. He crouched down, looking at the girl. "We're going in there, stay close, don't let go." She nodded quickly, her hands gripping his sleeve tighter. Together they slipped into the shaft. The noise of the market faded as they crawled through the narrow space. Pipes rattled above them, and the smell of rust and oil filled the air. Behind them, Daniel heard shouts. The kidnappers had spotted them. The chase was not over. But Daniel pushed forward, the girl at his side. He had promised himself he would not abandon her. No matter how many kidnappers came, no matter how dangerous the tunnels became, he would fight and run as long as it took. Because the girl's silent plea had become more than just her cry for help. It was his mission now. The service tunnels stretched on like a maze, dim lights flickering along the ceiling. Daniel's breath came heavy, his muscles burning. But he didn't stop. The little alien girl ran beside him, her hand gripping his sleeve tightly, her small feet stumbling over the uneven floor. Behind them, faint echoes of footsteps chased through the tunnels. The kidnappers hadn't given up. They were still hunting. Daniel pulled the girl into a side chamber half filled with crates and broken machines. He pressed his back to the wall, listening. The sound of pursuit grew fainter, turning another way. For now, they were safe. The girl slumped against the wall, her chest rising and falling quickly. Her glowing eyes met his. Tears shimmered, but this time she didn't look only afraid. She looked like she had something to tell him. Daniel crouched down in front of her. He pointed gently at her collar. "Can you speak?" he asked. She touched the metal ring around her throat and shook her head. The faint red light glowed stronger as if it sensed her attempt. Pain flickered across her face. Daniel frowned. "It stops your voice?" She nodded. Then, slowly, she pulled something from under her torn clothes. It was a small crystal, glowing faintly blue. She pressed it to her collar. The light flickered, then dimmed. For the first time, she opened her mouth and sound came out. Her voice was soft, trembling, but clear. "Thank you." Daniel froze. It was the first word he had heard from her. He smiled faintly. "You can talk now?" She nodded, holding the crystal tightly. "Only for a little while. This stone, my mother gave it to me. It can weaken the collar, not break it, but enough." Daniel's chest tightened at the mention of her mother. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Lyra." "Lyra," Daniel repeated softly. "Why are they after you? Why risk so much for one child?" Her eyes lowered. She clutched the crystal tighter. "Because I'm not just a child, I am the last of my kind." Daniel's breath caught. "The last?" She nodded, silver hair falling over her face. "My people were hunters long ago, but also healers. We carried a gift in our blood. My family hid me when slavers came. They killed the rest, only I survived. The kidnappers know what I am. They want to sell me to warlords, to scientists, to anyone who will pay." Her voice cracked. "They will use me until I die." Daniel's stomach turned cold. He thought back to the way the kidnappers had scanned her, the way they had called her rare blood. Now he understood. She wasn't just a victim. She was a treasure to the cruel, a prize in a galaxy with no mercy. Lyra's eyes lifted again, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I tried to hide. I tried to stay quiet. But they always find me. No one ever helps. People look away, always." Daniel remembered the spaceport crowd, hundreds of beings walking past her without care. He had almost done the same. Almost. But her eyes had stopped him. That silent plea had chained itself to his heart. He leaned closer, his voice steady. "Not this time. Not while I'm here." Her lip trembled. "Why? You don't even know me." Daniel thought for a moment. His mind returned to his past. War, loss, the faces of children who never made it home. He had carried guilt for years. Maybe this was his chance to do something right. "Because you deserve to live," he said firmly. "Because no child should suffer alone." Her tears fell faster. For the first time, she let out a soft, broken sob, muffled as she buried her face against his arm. Her small frame shook, years of fear pouring out in that one moment. Daniel let her cry. He placed a hand gently on her back. He didn't promise her the galaxy. He didn't say the danger was over. But he gave her the only thing he had, his presence. After a while, she wiped her eyes. "They won't stop. They will keep coming. You can't fight all of them." Daniel nodded slowly. "Maybe not. But we'll outsmart them. We'll find safety. Somewhere they can't reach you." Her eyes widened with fragile hope. Is there such a place? Daniel thought about human colonies, about hidden stations he had passed in his travels. He didn't know yet, but he wasn't going to let despair crush her. "Yes," he said. "There's always a place. We'll find it together." Before Lyra could answer, a noise echoed from the tunnel. Heavy footsteps, voices. The kidnappers were close again. Daniel grabbed her hand. Time to move. They slipped out of the chamber and back into the maze of pipes and shadows. The chase wasn't over. If anything, it was just beginning. As they ran, Lyra clutched the crystal close, her eyes brighter now, her steps steadier. For the first time, she wasn't just running from fear. She was running with hope, because someone had chosen to stand with her. And Daniel, no matter the danger, no matter the cost, knew he would not let her down. The tunnel shook with footsteps. Voices echoed, deep and angry, as more kidnappers closed in. Daniel pulled Lyra through the narrow passage, his breath sharp, his mind racing. He could not outrun all of them. There were too many. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber filled with old engines and broken machinery. Steam hissed. From cracked pipes and shadows danced across the walls. Daniel stopped scanning the room. His soldier instincts told him the truth. This would be the place. They couldn't keep running forever. They had to make a stand. He crouched beside Lyra, his voice low but steady. "Listen to me. They'll Be here any second. I need you to stay behind that machine. He pointed to a large rusted engine at the corner. Don't move until it's over. Do you understand? Her silver eyes filled with fear. They'll kill you. Daniel shook his head. Not today. Not while you're here. She clutched the crystal at her throat. But I'm just one child. Why risk your life? He smiled faintly. Because you're not cargo. You're not a prize. You're someone worth saving, and I won't let them take you. Her lips trembled, but she nodded and slipped behind the engine. The voices grew louder. Heavy boots thudded against the floor as 5 kidnappers entered the chamber. They carried batons, knives, and nets. Their leader, taller than the rest, had a scar across his face and a cruel smile. There he is, the leader growled. The human who thinks he can steal our fortune. His eyes scanned the shadows. And the girl. I can smell her fear. Daniel stepped into the light. His body was tired, but his stance was unbroken. He held a broken metal pipe like a spear. Let her go, he said, his voice echoing. The kidnappers laughed. The scarred leader sneered. You think you can fight? Us all with that scrap? You're already dead. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Maybe, but I'll make sure you bleed first. The first attacker rushed him with a baton crackling with energy. Daniel sidestepped, slamming the pipe into the man's knee. Bone cracked. The alien roared, falling to the ground. 2 more came at once, swinging blades. Daniel ducked low, the pipe spinning in his hands. He jabbed forward, striking one in the chest, then twisted to block the other's blade. Sparks flew as metal clashed against metal. Pain tore through his side as a fist slammed into him from behind. Daniel stumbled, gasping, his vision blurred. But he forced himself up again. He couldn't fall. Not yet. From the corner, Lyra's glowing eyes watched, wide with terror. She pressed her hands together, whispering words Daniel could not hear. Her small crystal flickered brighter, pulsing with blue light. The scarred leader stepped forward, blade in hand. Enough games. End him. The kidnappers closed in. Daniel fought like a storm, swinging, blocking, striking. Every move was fueled, not by strength but by will. He thought of Lyra's silent plea, of the crowd that ignored her, of his own vow never to walk away again. He slammed the pipe into one attacker's jaw, sending him sprawling. Another slashed across Daniel's arm, blood dripping down. Pain burned, but Daniel gritted his teeth. He shoved the attacker into a steam pipe. Hot vapor hissed out, scalding the alien as he screamed. Still more came. Daniel's arms shook, his breath ragged. His body was reaching its limit. Then something changed. The crystal in Lyra's hands glowed brighter, flooding the chamber with blue light. She stepped from behind the engine, her voice breaking through the silence. Stop, she cried. The collar around her neck flickered, then cracked, sparks flying as the crystal overwhelmed its power. The kidnappers froze for a moment, stunned by the light and the sound of her voice. Daniel didn't waste the chance. With a roar, he drove the pipe straight into the scarred leader's chest. The alien stumbled back, eyes wide with shock before collapsing to the floor. The others hesitated. Their leader was down, their prize glowing like a beacon of power. Fear crept into their faces. Daniel raised the pipe again, bloodied but unbroken. Who's next? The kidnappers exchanged glances. Without their leader, their courage cracked. One by one, they backed away, retreating into the tunnels. Their footsteps faded until only silence remained. Daniel dropped the pipe, his body shaking. He fell to one knee, gasping for air. Blood dripped from his wounds, but he was alive. Lyra rushed to him, tears streaming down her cheeks. You saved me. Daniel looked at her collar, now broken in pieces on the floor. Her voice was free. Her tears were real. He forced a tired smile. No, Lyra. You saved yourself. That light, it scared them. She shook her head fiercely. No, I was only brave because you were here. No one else ever stayed. Only you. Her small arms wrapped around him, holding tight. For the first time since he had seen her, she wasn't trembling in fear. She was trembling with relief. Daniel rested a hand gently on her back. It's over, he whispered. You're safe now. The chamber was quiet again, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with something new. Hope. Lyra looked up, her eyes shining. Where will we go now? Daniel thought about it. He didn't have all the answers. The galaxy was wide, and danger still lurked. But he knew one thing. He wouldn't let her face it alone. Somewhere safe, he said softly. We'll find it. Together. And with that, Daniel rose slowly, holding Lyra's hand. The broken collar lay forgotten on the floor. The kidnappers' network would surely come again, but so would Daniel's courage. Because in that dark galaxy, one human had listened to a silent plea, and that had made all the difference.